On this episode, I sit down with Grant Inaba, who is a realtor and the team lead of the Good Agent Real Estate Team. With over 15 years in the industry, today he divulges how he leveraged his network to close a, ready for this, $12.5 million deal. Now, before we get started, go ahead and do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, I'm your host, Shawn Kunkler. Grant, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Shawn.
Let's dive into this just right away. Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Grant Inaba, and I'm a realtor, and realtor in the Northern California Bay Area, specifically the East Bay. But I've got a team of agents, and we cover as much of the Bay Area as we can, primarily Alameda County, Contra Costa County, Solano County. And I'm starting to partner more with agents in the peninsula as well as South Bay too. So kind of doing a little bit of expansion there too in the future.
That's amazing. For people listening who are, let's say, in the Midwest and they don't have contacts, that's a large footprint. So you have a good sized team, it sounds like.
Yeah, we've got a team of 6 agents and always recruiting more all the time. I found actually 6 agents is still not enough. You know, a lot of times we need support behind support. And one person's sick, and we've got to go, kind of 3 degrees down in order to find someone who can fill in. And it's not always available that they're free to help out. The whole point of having a team is to collaborate, to support each other, to be able to network information, share information. I'd like to have the largest team possible, and it helps us also cover a larger geography as well, of course.
Absolutely. And to your point, you get really healthy overlap as people get pulled away and things. Like I have a team member she's traveling right now and paperwork needed to be done. We just jumped in and took care of it for her, which sounds like you do similar.
Yeah. I've actually got an agent that's out right now. He's on vacation in Mexico. And I've got another agent that's out sick. She's actually got influenza. Shaha, I hope you're feeling better very, very soon. But that's already 1/3 of the team. So it's always, a great idea to have support, and obviously different agents, they're focused on different things. They have different interests. So it's nice to be able to, when a client comes in, they say, hey, I want to do something specific, like say investments, rental investments or flip investments. We've got an agent that has a specific interest and knowledge base in that, and we can send it directly over to them.
That's smart. Having specialists within your team, I always find that's a very smart strategy. So in having 6 agents, and then you're obviously the team lead, how many support people do you have on the back end?
1 admin assist, and then also he's our photographer, but he does a whole lot more. He does our social media. He does our website design, website support. He's kind of a jack of all trades on the technology side. And that includes graphic design as well. So I would almost call him like another admin assist, but really much more on the technical side.
It sounds like they're obviously doing social media, but are they doing other avenues of marketing for you as well?
It's mostly just social media support, and it's usually just graphic design. We're still kind of manually doing our own social media ourselves, so they don't actually do it for us, or say they don't post for us. But I would love to get him in a position where, if he had the bandwidth and he would be able to do that, then he would actually take on that task. He actually met me on Instagram, and it's funny. I do a lot of great networking on Instagram. He approached me originally in order to photograph our listings. We just kind of started talking more and more about that, and talked more about goals. And he wanted to kind of build an all-encompassing media support company for real estate agents. And I said to him, hey, well, why don't we actually do that with this team? Keep you busy, and then, try and network with you in order to introduce you to more real estate agents that might be interested in the same thing. Photography it's a pretty, in my opinion, it's a pretty crowded space. There's a lot of real estate photographers out there. They all, for the most part, are all kind of catering towards the same style and look that everybody wants. So in that way, they're kind of a little bit, the same. The only thing that might separate them is the rate. But, if they offer a whole lot more package or features, within, their repertoire of services, then I think it's becoming much more beneficial for that outfit or that production. And so he started to kind of think about that, and we started to talk about how we could do that. And so now he's kind of becoming a legit company, and doing all the support for us, and we're kind of helping him build his business as well.
That's cool. I love those symbiotic relationships. And it's interesting that you're leveraging Instagram. Of the different agents I've talked to on this platform, Instagram is the one everybody keeps going to and just saying it's the best place to actually connect with people versus TikTok. Sure, you get a million views, but you don't actually make the connection per se. It's beaten out LinkedIn, Facebook, though Instagram is a hub of Facebook. Instagram is like the winner thus far.
It's so weird to me too. It's basically just scrolling images, it's basically just kind of like a big giant pictogram. You would think that Facebook has a lot more, kind of text based and also link based features, that it would be a lot more robust. LinkedIn also as well, it's very business based. So we're doing business, well, you're doing business. Hey, let's do business. Whereas Instagram, it's like all types of people doing all types of different things. These Instagram influencers and models and car people and house people, and it's like a kind of a giant circus, which kind of makes it fun. But we're able to kind of collide and crash into people, and make introductions and say hello, and start conversations. And I think that's where it all begins, really.
I completely agree. That's our business. It's about having conversations, and on a long enough timeline, every property is going to sell, and somebody's inevitably going to know somebody who wants to buy or sell. So being top of mind is just so incredibly important. There's so many good directions we can go with this conversation right now. I love this right out of the gate. We can keep elaborating on teams. We can talk about social media. Let's go back to teams, just because I'm so interested in, and most people listening to this, of course, want to build out a team. And so it sounds like you have six main agents looking for more, which we all are always. We'll talk about recruiting in a second. And then you have your essentially 2 support staff people. Do you have anybody else on your team?
That's pretty much it. No, with Compass, a lot of our support, comes from actually admins and staff, and I find that to be, I think a big component of, what makes us successful agents as well. So I would not discount those people either. We also pay for it in our commission too, so we might as well give them credit.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's. Yeah, the transaction coordinator that we use is offered through Compass, though we pay for it. She's amazing. Like, she, at the end of the day, makes all the agents not only look good, but keeps us out of precarious liabilities, just because she knows that side of the business so darn well.
Yeah, keeps us sane too. I can't put my mind around all those disclosures that we have to keep track of and make sure they're signed and back and forth by both parties and everything. I'm so glad they're there, because I don't think I would actually be able to be a successful real estate agent without them.
I certainly wouldn't. No, I mean, I think agents are really great at making messes, and then you have to have the support people to clean it up behind you. And my support staff is like, they're rock stars. Like, they make me look amazing because I'm not that organized, and they're just like da, 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 and they get it all dialed in. And not only that, we're talking about we work in different markets, and different markets have different contracts. They have different, just it's a whole slew of different things and different statutory disclosures and different layers to the business that you can know it, but remembering it all is exhausting. So it's much easier just to have people on your team. You're like, hey, I'm going to be doing a transaction here. What are my key documents do I need? And get that support that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And that's where Compass, I think, is. That's a tout Compass again. I feel like every episode we're like, it's amazing. But there's some really good things that makes the process a lot easier. In our market, we don't use attorneys, so we have to be a lot more resourceful in finding things and making sure we're doing stuff right. How are you recruiting?
It used to be a little bit word of mouth, and then I started to get a lot more intentional about it, and I started actually using formal sites like ZipRecruiter Indeed.com, LinkedIn, of course. Mostly kind of doing it very slowly. I found that you can, ramp it up real quick and get yourself, a team of agents really fast. I think scaling that support and making sure that they're working efficiently and all working together, I think that takes a little bit of massaging and a whole lot of time. So I don't like to recruit really, really fast, but those are generally the formats in which I'm looking for agents. And it's like always you're looking around and talking to people and going out to coffee and, oh, my cousin, he's actually just got licensed. Do you want to talk with him? Oh, yeah, sure, of course, I'd love to. It's kind of it's a numbers game. You're looking for as many agents as you can, but you're really kind of looking for the best ones possible, of course. The ones that are maybe newer or not as motivated, you kind of find out along the way, how competent, proficient they are, how hungry they are as well, and so you have to kind of scale your own support accordingly. Also, all different agents, you got to make sure that they actually work with your team and kind of hold the same philosophy and want to do the same type of business, and fill those spaces where you actually need a lot of support. Uh, I think that recruiting is really one of the easier parts. It's keeping the whole thing together, which is really tough.
I think it is easy, right, to find agents. It's hard to find the right fit
Yeah,
for the team
yeah,
because one bad hire, as we both know, can just destroy everything that you've built. And that's like, it's like introducing a cancer. So I'm of this a similar philosophy of hire slow, fire fast, of just really take your time of making sure you're really finding the pieces that are going to fit well, because nothing is more satisfying when you have somebody who's really, really driven and motivated, and then you hire somebody else who's really motivated and driven, and the energy they feed off of each other, just it amplifies times 10, and their momentum, just virtue of that, it it's so attractive and appealing. And if you get another person who's like-minded, now you have this very healthy competition that automatically just starts creating within its team.
and as a teammate, they can see that teammate. They can say, "Oh my gosh, he's doing it," and that means I can do it too. Or he's doing it. I want to learn how to, to do it like he's doing it. I want to talk with him, want to spend more time with him, want to network with him more. It brings their level of competency, their level of expertise, their level of drive up as well. Obviously, I think when they look at me, like I have to produce, I have to show them that this can be done. I have to, set the example. But it's not always the best example for them to say, "Oh, I can do this too." When they see someone at their own lateral position actually doing really, really well, I think it's a huge, huge motivating effect.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I had a similar, I remember early on in my career, I went to lunch with a very, very high producing agent. And I think at the time she was in the business, I don't know, 15-ish years, and like in the very high luxury category. And she had been there for quite a long period of time. And I asked, like, what are you doing daily in your production? Like, what do you do? And she's like, you're asking me the wrong question. Ask me what I did when I was at year one going into year two. And I was like, oh, and that was like a big eye opener, similar to your teammates. If they're looking at you, you're 15 years in.
About that, yeah. Yeah.
So they're looking at you and seeing what you're doing at 15 years, that's very intimidating because you have 15 years of experience backing into that. And if they only have 1 year, it's a very tough thing to measure against. But if they measure against your 1 year, then it's like, it's much more approachable of, oh, okay, I can go from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3, 3 to 4. You can't go from 1 to 15. Like it's not going to be, sure, it's possible, but you're a 0.0001% of the population who's going to actually figure out how to pull that off. miraculously.
Yeah. There are people out there though, I think. Oh man, humanity is crazy. There's some people out there that they do superhuman things that I can't even imagine. Doing my first year is like, how the heck did you do that? I would never have thought I could have done that my first year, and they pull it off. It's very impressive. Yeah, a lot of that I think comes down to youth as well. A lot of these young kids like getting into real estate. They're 19 years old. That was unheard of. I think when we started, and it's just really impressive how real estate has changed and how technology has changed it, and the possibilities we have now with real estate. When I started doing real estate, teams were just starting and it was just becoming a thing. And I think the team format has really kind of revolutionized real estate in a big way as well. Um, yeah, so many different things in real estate that have enabled us to do superhuman things.
Yeah, I mean, in a very short period of time, you know, for being such an old industry, we're now to the point where you can literally write a multi-million-dollar offer from your phone inside of your car, sitting in front of the house and hit send and then be ratified by the time you get back home. I mean, that's like mind-boggling to think about. Prior to, you'd have to go and get a book, literally a book, and flip through it and see what properties are available, and then highlight the ones for your clients and go drive over to their house. And yeah, it's a very different thing. Not only is the technology obviously completely shifting the way we do everything in our lives, but I also, all of these TV shows that have been really popular, from flipping houses to actual realtors selling and transacting and doing all of those activities, I think is really helping shed some light on the industry itself in a good way. I think some of it's definitely like, made for TV. It's a little bit, there's some cheese factor, of course, but I think it's making it it's showing it in a way that's appealing and attractive. And to your point, there's a younger demographic coming into it, which I think is great.
Yeah, I wish there was more like home ownership formatted TV shows instead of just flipping. Because we meet so many investors that have watched these shows and they say, "I can do this," and they can kind of pull it off. They can half do it. They can do it, but maybe lose a little bit of money.
Well, I think the other great illusion is people don't realize when you have to go to the Department of Building and actually get permits, how arduous and long that process actually is. It's not, you don't wave a magic wand after you've decided to blow out a wall and then you can do it. Like there's an entire series of events that have to happen that are going to cost you a ton of time. And then the other thing you don't initially realize is there's a carrying cost to all of that, because you're still paying taxes, you're still paying rent, you still have to keep the lights on. There's a bit of smoke and mirrors to it. Like you really have to like dig in. There's great podcasts though, and different channels where if somebody really wants to learn investing, there's a lot of great opportunities outside of just the HGTV, like waving the magic wand and then they show you the finished product.
Yeah, exactly. Although it's funny, I actually started watching those shows. I never ever watched them ever. I guess I was just too busy, doing my own business and doing my own real estate, that I never really made time for TV, period. There was a whole, I think, generation of television that I didn't even watch. I completely missed Breaking Bad.
I never watched it.
Yeah, we're too busy doing real estate, right? I just recently started watching some of those flipping shows, and I was really impressed at how much you can actually learn, especially from a construction standpoint. You really have to kind of, I think it's very advantageous that we know all this stuff already, right? If you're trying to absorb it all as a beginner, then I think maybe you're not really going to get as much out of it as we would. But I find myself, kind of picking out these little details or small things that they do that it's like, oh, that's really interesting. Actually, that's a really great time saver for renovations, or that was a really great decision for that color choice or that tile choice. And I found them to be actually pretty educational for myself. They're not going to teach you from nuts to bolts, A to Z, how to flip a house. But I do find them enjoyable nonetheless.
For sure. I mean, I definitely think they're entertainment. So that's why we watch them, which I agree that part is certainly there. I think the great thing that those types of shows have done is it gives people permission to imagine when they see these properties that are not in the best condition. They can look at it and say, in the back of their mind, they have now examples that it can be changed and it can evolve into something else. That's actually when I talk to buyers, one of my questions is like, are you willing to buy a house that is a big project, or are you just looking for little weekend stuff to do? And then based on what they say, I can guide them much better. But then I always have them, after they find a house, I tell them to put things into one or two categories. Is this thing that you don't like about the house, is it fixed or can we change it? And then once you decide if it's fixed or if you can change it, if you can change it, then it's just a matter of figuring out, do you want to do it? And how much time and money is that going to cost? And if you can't change it, like the location, is it something you're just okay living with? But I think getting to that point, these shows have really, really helped buyers just view things in a much different light than they had previously. Like, let's say 10 or 20 years ago, before these shows were so profoundly popular.
That's really, really cool. That's a great viewpoint. I like that a lot. I actually, when I'm thinking about my clients, I kind of take an exact opposite 180. I think that a lot of these flipping shows have kind of, I wouldn't say brainwashed people, but they've kind of got people to think in the very same type of design format. The house exterior needs to be gray. The kitchen needs to have an island. It needs to have a subway tile backsplash. All these things. It needs to have a rain shower head. All these things that these people see, and they say, "I need this in my house, and it needs to look like this, and it needs to be completely flipped out. And I'm not going to buy anything else. I need to have this house that's totally done for me." And I find that, these, and I think you do too in your market, these are the houses that are ones that are selling for the most amount of money, and people are competing the most for these houses. It's the fixer-uppers that nobody wants to touch because they all want the final product.
That's 100% true. There's a Barbara Corcoran quote. I tell all my clients this. At the end of the day, everybody wants what everybody wants, and nobody wants what nobody wants. And so if you want the deal, go find the thing that nobody wants and make it the way everybody wants it. And then you'll have an amazing deal. But like, even in a downturn market, a slow market that we're in right now, those properties that are dialed to the nines and they have all of those things you've mentioned and then some, they fly off the shelf still.
Yeah, exactly. And those people that have, God bless those people that have enough money to be able to buy those houses. But there's also, kind of the lower tier people as well that still want those houses and won't make that compromise. And I feel really bad for them sometimes, because it does take a lot of creativity to get in this market. And I need to meet a lot more of your clients, the ones that are, willing to sit down with you and really make strategies and hard decisions about what's going to work for them, what's not going to work.
Don't get me wrong. Like, not every client comes around quickly. Like, some of them want to do it their own way for a long period of time. And that's just the way it is. Like, we've all had those challenges, but I tell my clients right out of the gate, listen, I'm going to shoot it to you straight. And sometimes you're not going to like what I have to say, but I'm going to give you my advisements, like the best advisement I can with the information that's available at the time. And like, I'm going to say it in a nice way. It's not going to be stingy, but I want to get you up to speed quickly, so you're not spinning your wheels and just grinding around looking at these homes that are just egregiously underpriced, that we know are going to go way, way outside of the budget. Like, I will just tell them, like this thing's going to land way outside of what you and I have discussed. Like, sure, you can go look at it, and sure, we can write an offer, but this is where it's going to land. But I mean, as we both have been around the block, it takes a minute for some people to wrap their head around that one.
Yeah, well, fortunately, we're in a different market now, and pricing's a little bit more. Uh, I don't even know what the word is. Realistic, I guess. It used to be in our markets. I think maybe yours as well. We list everything 20% below market value. Once the buyer saw the property online, they'd say, "Oh, actually, I can afford this. Let's go see it." And then they show up with a realtor, and the realtor breaks the bad news to them and says, "Actually, this property that's listed for 800,000 is going to sell for 1.1. Are you okay with that?" And they say, "Well, we like the house so much, I think we can stretch it." These days, I think there's a lot more transparent pricing. This is what you get. This is what you're paying for. This is the amount of competition you're going to see. Make your offer accordingly. And I like that type of market, honestly.
It's definitely much easier, and it's more for the buyer. It's just, I think for both the seller and buyer, there's a lot less liability because you don't have to waive all these contingencies. You can actually do your due diligence more thoroughly, which allows both sides to just be very clear. Whereas the prior market, we'll call it the 0% rate market, it was just frantic. Like people were frantically buying and just making very aggressive, risky moves to purchase. Whereas now you can keep that inspection contingency. You can actually have it, and then you can really evaluate the property.
Yeah, you can negotiate too. I mean, before it was take it or leave it, and when you take it, you have no outs whatsoever.
Yeah, it was a little insane for a while. I actually much prefer this market.
Yeah.
Though it's like a new set of challenges, but I think that also implies a new set of opportunities for us.
I got to be honest with you, 2020 caused me a whole huge amount of anxiety. I was scared that whole time, making offers from my buyers and just hoping that I got that pricing right. It was just such astronomical numbers, and it kept on getting more and more expensive, and the competition started getting higher and higher and higher, and you had to run with it, and you started to kind of question yourself whether or not this was actually something that was in our best interest of our buyer. Obviously, they're the ones that make the decision at the end of the day, but man, it's a whole lot of responsibility for us realtors, honestly, to catch up with such a crazy market.
When you look at the comps, and the comps are already out of date and they're a week old, because damn well it's going to go another 8% above that. It's especially a brand new buyer coming into the market. That's a really hard conversation. And then they get blown up 2 or 3 times right out of the gate just because they're making good offers. They're just the other 25 offers that came in above them, they've been beat out much more times. So they're just far more aggressive. You're right. Like I prefer, in repping buyers right now, it's much easier. Representing sellers, it's a different ball game. It's obviously our days on market are much more, our marketing costs are much more. It's really hard from being on the listing side you have to be much more creative to get other agents to actually look at your emails or to get them to look at your videos. And you can't be lazy. You can't just put it on the MLS and then expect, I'm going to get 25 people to come through tomorrow to come see it, and then we'll get an offer by end of day. It's just not that speed anymore. So I've been finding I front load my sellers more with, here's the marketing strategy at these thresholds, or this is when we're going to have to reevaluate and figure out, do we take a new direction at this point?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Every time my listing presentations, I sit down with them and I say, what we saw previous to March is completely different from what we see now. And I'm sorry, it's only 6 months ago that happened, but it's literally a different market. And they say, well, I want my house to sell, and I want my house to go in contract in a week, and I want it to sell at the end of the month. Can you still do that? And it's like, those are days gone past. That's way in a rearview mirror now. And you have to give them a much more practical timeline. I tell them straight out, I say, you probably won't have any offer come in for at least 30 days. They seem to take it pretty well, though, I think. And I think a lot of it is because they understand that it's abnormal to have a house go in contract in 7 days. It's abnormal to have 30 offers, on a single house at one time. So obviously, I think they want that, but I also think they understand that the market's different and that it's a little bit more practical now. I'm hoping that they understand that.
I'm assuming that people are watching the news and kind of paying attention to what is happening and why it's happening. And, like with the various tools that we have access to, when you show people the data and you kind of match up what's happening, and you kind of, there's a really good sales quote, it matters who says it, and if you're showing them, hey, your neighbor's house sold in 45 days, the house down the street sold in 50 days, this one sold in 62 days. And then you're guiding them, hey, it's realistic that we're not going to get any activity for a minimum of 30 days. This then supports that narrative. And I think when it's packaged in such a compelling way, people can actually wrap their heads around it.
Yeah, definitely. The data is great. The data doesn't lie. It's a great best friend, and something we always rely on. And hopefully the data doesn't trick us or doesn't trick our sellers.
I mean, you can
Yeah.
certainly cut data, slice it to show your own story if you wanted to, but I think for the most part, if you just present it all and give them the opportunity to observe it, people can have realistic expectations. And if they don't, they might not be the best client.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that I'm kind of curious what you think as well. I think that inventory is really going to shift now going forward. I think we're going to start seeing more inventory.
That's a great question. I'm going to give you my flippant answer that I say to all my clients. I don't have a crystal ball is what I say, but I would imagine it's going to increase. And the reason I would say that is patternistically, what we're seeing is we're not seeing mortgage rates go down, and we're not really seeing them stabilize. And so, it's cause and effect. As the rates go up, prices come down. And I'm speaking in like very general terms. Obviously, what the real estate market is doing in Montana is very different than Florida. And there's, a handful of a ton of other states across our nation. So it's very arrogant of me to say like a generic, this is going to happen, but it's it's a teeter totter. If rates go up, prices tend to come down. And if prices go up, it's because mortgage rates are low. And so there's that balance. And so I would imagine, because of all of those things happening, that overall we're going to see a buildup of inventory.
Yeah. I'm starting to take the opinion that I think we hit the peak at 7%, and we're starting to kind of level off. The interest rate has kind of deflated a little bit. I think it's going to probably within the year. I'd say within 2023. By the end of 2023, it's probably going to be well on its way to stabilizing. I'm thinking it's probably going to be somewhere around 5%. And I think once we hit that, then we're going to see a much more active market. And I think it's already, kind of starting as of, say, January. I think that we're going to see a much more healthier, much more active buyer side. That's really going to draw out the sellers. A lot of them, I think they're scared that they, miss the market. But even if they sell this year in 2023, I think that they're not too far off from what they would have gotten at the peak of the market. Obviously, everybody always wants to sell right at the very, very top. But, along with that crystal ball, that's the only thing that you could have that would guarantee that you would be able to do that. And it's way too difficult to be right there on the dot, right there on the pin.
Timing the market is nearly impossible. The thing that you can control is time in the market. And I mean, who knows, was there, like, where is the actual peak? Like it's a fluid thing. It's continuously moving. And the flip side, it's what's good for the buyer is bad for the seller, and what's good for the seller is bad for the buyer. And so it's a very aloof thing. And I also, in our area, we have many large pockets of properties that are well north of 1,000,000, 2, 3, 4, 5 million. And when you start getting into the ultra luxury, you are catering to a very different client. And the pressures that are influencing the people who are borrowing the money doesn't necessarily create the same pressure for the person who just has the money. And they kind of create their own weather in all of this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see it. You work in the luxury category and you see people with just, we're buying our third, fourth, fifth home and we're paying cash. And once we find it, we'll buy it. And that's that.
Yeah.
It's almost casually irrelevant what's happening with the market or rates or any of these other things. It's just, I recently had a client who they wound up buying in Pennsylvania. Their daughter was going to college there. They wanted a house where it was comfortable for their daughter, but big enough for them to come visit. So they bought a $2.5 million house. And it wasn't, all these other factors that we're discussing didn't matter. That was what they were doing. That was their plan. They had their timeline and that was it. And so it was just a matter of finding a property and executing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Those luxury clients as well, the more higher end clients, they have the ability to weather the market a whole lot better than other clients as well. So they generally always kind of, I shouldn't say always, but they tend to come out winners no matter what. And I think they kind of understand that as well. They understand money, they understand how it's used, they understand how to take advantage of it. I think a lot of our lower priced clients, they're still learning, they're still afraid, they're still cautious and wary about how money operates. And it's a completely different point of view than a luxury buyer. It's unfortunate that we all don't have that same kind of mindset or that same understanding of money that higher end people do, because I think we'd all be kind of better off people if we did.
When you have the reserves and you have the advisors, it definitely puts you in a different, naturally, it puts you in a different position. So on that note, let's talk to me about your knock it out of the ballpark sale that you recently had for $12.5 million, which is insanely awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
The sale was pretty straightforward, honestly. To tell you the truth, it was listed by a Compass agent and very prominent in her market. Very, very collaborative agent, as Compass agents tend to be. So it made the transaction very, very easy. A lot of times when you're going into a transaction with another agent on the other side, you sometimes don't really know what's going to happen, just because you don't know their personalities, their tendencies, their notions, how they do business, how they view business. It just so happened that she was very, very easy to work with and very collaborative and made the process so easy, honestly. Escrow moved very, very quickly. There was a lot of things to navigate with these larger houses. There's so many more components to the house. This house had radiant floors throughout and a big giant boiler. Boiler failed actually in the middle of the escrow, and so we had to have it installed. It's kind of a pricey item. We were able to negotiate a resolution order to get that done, and got it done quickly during the middle of escrow and went forward to closing on time. So yeah, hats off to the agents out there that know their market, know their product, know what they're selling, and know how to deal with it. When we made our offer, the market is really, really tough on luxury when the market starts to deflate. And so, I think we did, our buyers that represented, we did take advantage of that. And we were able to, quote unquote, get a deal. They're always going to be looking good no matter what. The house is really a wonderful house and will serve their needs to the T. And they're going to be enjoying it for a very long time.
That's outstanding. That's very nice commission. Congrats.
Yeah, it's mostly going to go to taxes.
I feel you. Taxes crippling this year for sure. How did you first meet that buyer?
Through the Compass network. And, everybody talks about, I think everyone's kind of battering on Compass lately, mostly because of the commission splits in the real estate industry. On the flip side of that, and really gouging into Compass and, stealing a lot of that market share, I, I do agree that Compass does take a lot of commission from us, but I think what they give is just, so enormous. And so that's why I'm at Compass. And the big reason, in my opinion, in order to be a part of Compass is to be a part of the network of a high end um, agents across the country that know what they're doing, that have been in the market for a very long time. They're market leaders in their individual cities and markets. And, I think that network is priceless. I really think that if there's any reason to be at any brokerage and really think about, very, very strategically, very, very thoughtfully about what brokerage you want to be a part of. If you want to do high end, you want to do luxury, then Compass is the only place to be.
Our network is very unique, and any referral is by far the easiest conversion of all time versus a cold lead or an online lead. Somebody who's being hand nurtured and handed to you that's how you and I both met years ago. I had a client who purchased a home. Her mom was looking to buy a home in your market. And then I don't remember how I specifically got or came across your name. And I remember we had a brief conversation. I was like, oh, he's a rock star. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's seasoned. You knew the market, you knew the house. You jumped right in, started to help. Unfortunately, they wound up writing the offer with the listing agent and then wanting to change the contract. And then I was like, well, you're going to have a conversation with that agent. Like, I'm out. I can't, I'm sorry. I can't help you.
It's always funny when the clients, they think they know more about real estate than we do. And I kind of felt like that was the situation with those clients. I don't know. I never really had too much of an opportunity to actually talk with them. It was really tough.
It was strange. I think, to give you more context, they came from the East Coast, and I think they were out here, if I remember correctly, this was years ago, but I think they were out here for the weekend, saw the property, and it was just like a snowball effect. It all just happened like incredibly fast, but I didn't get called in until they were like 80% into it all. And so by the time you were pulled in, it was far beyond like saving for either side. But that's how we initially stayed in connection. And to your point, like we rely so heavily on our network of connecting. And we're also we have a ton of tech here. We have a lot of obviously big brand companies, but then within that, most people aren't from here. So we're also a very transient place. So people are moving in and out all the time. So it is a really good hub for us to be networking on a local scale and on a national scale, because you just never know where these referrals are going to be bouncing in from.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
With your business, do you find the bulk of your transactions are referral based, or are you paying for leads? Where's the bulk of the leads coming in for your team?
When I very first joined Compass, I was really gung ho about referral business, and I think in my very first year, I did 10 referral contracts, and that's basically one extra contract a month. When you kind of break it down. And that's pretty significant. I'm always been kind of pretty proud of myself for that statistic. Lately, I haven't really been so much, but I think after this had happened with this $12 million sale, then I think it's a good reason to go back in, start to network a lot more. I had a son actually, also. He's 2 years old now, and so I have not been going to the retreats. I think the Compass retreats are a huge, big, once again, big component of being able to build referral business, getting face to face with people, shaking their hands, actually talking to them and, having great times with them as well. I think those retreats are great events, and I really want to start going to them again. I think the next one's in San Diego to my knowledge, and, that's a local for us. So.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard it was San Diego, which I'm excited about. It's an easy commute for us from the Bay Area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's a team member, Priyanka. Her and I were talking about, she was looking into doing ninja sales training, which is it's a great course. And she was looking for places local. And I was like, no. Pick places that are not local, but where you'll have the highest percentage of symbiotic business. Like, where's another hub? New York, Austin, Seattle, LA, and go there because the concentration of agents are going to be from there. And then go and sit next to somebody new every day and every session. Like, come back and sit next to somebody new, introduce yourself, and to your point, build out that network, because it's just all about connecting dots, connecting people, and having conversations. I literally just today, somebody sent out on TAN, Top Agent Network. They said, hey, does anybody have a great leasing agent for the north side of the city? Immediately, my good friend Ina, I sent her a message. I was like, hey, I think this is right up your alley, and sent it to her. Like, I'm getting nothing out of it. I'm not part of that percentage, but she's going to benefit from it. But it's those little things, they come back to you, and the more you do them, the more they come back. And I mean, my referrals, my personal referrals, not the whole team's, but just mine, I was probably 90% of my business last year was all just referral base, that's amazing. Like, it's such a different place to be than just having to beg for business, which no one wants to do.
Speaking for myself, I think, we talk about this at Compass. You start the flywheel, you get the flywheel going, and then the flywheel basically runs itself. That's kind of how I'm running my own personal business at this point right now. A lot of the buyers that I've assisted, way back in the days, they refer me to other buyers that they know that, need to do something in the local market. A lot of my buyers come back and they say, I need to sell a place, and, I need to buy another place. So it's a lot of that business that's happening. And then there's the occasional referral business that comes in. For my team, we're basically scrambling everywhere for any type of reliable lead generation source there is out there. So we're buying Zillow leads, we're buying online marketing leads, we're digging deep into social media, pulling out leads from there too as well. Even doing door knocking, a lot of that old school stuff that people used to do that has been replaced by digital geofencing or digital technology. We still do a lot of that old school stuff too as well. Pretty much everything except for cold calling. I mean, I don't really know that cold calling is very effective, but I think anything that's out there that's legal, that's free game, we try and do it.
It's very fascinating with the way markets work, and even with just general advertising, is things that work really good in one neighborhood don't work in another neighborhood. It's very interesting. The Compass philosophy is fail fast. Like, try it, see if it works, measure your result, try it again, see if it works, measure your result. And if it doesn't work, try something new. And if it does work, tweak it and try to make it a little bit better. But I think you just have to keep trying things. Like, Zillow was crushing it during the peak pandemic because you couldn't just go to an open house. So you had to book an appointment. And so if you had to book an appointment, you would go to these platforms that you would have the opportunity to book the appointment, hence Zillow. So I had friends that were they were getting tons of leads from that. But then, like a light switch, once open houses started again, it just stopped. Like, Zillow just stopped. And I know it stopped because my phone started blowing up from them wanting me to buy leads from them.
Well, you know what else?
But I
was going to say, what else I found out about Zillow was during the pandemic, I think a lot of the agents on the agent side, they got freaked out and they pulled out of paying for advertising on Zillow too as well.
I think that happened too. I mean, that's generally anytime we go into a recession or a different market, regardless of real estate, whatever industry we're talking about, marketing tends to get pulled first. Whenever income becomes uncertain, we immediately just cut that off or cut it way back. And so, to your point, I think that happened very aggressively, especially the early days. In the early days of things shutting down, I shut down a lot of my spends, but turned them right back on as soon as those opportunities were able to. We just cranked everything full blast.
I've always been big on Zillow, and so when I noticed that people were pulling out of Zillow, agents were pulling out of Zillow, that's when I doubled down. And then it was more towards the end of the pandemic when I started to kind of pull out and level out my spend in Zillow. And now I'm starting to go back in again. So yeah, you're right. Some of it, I think, some of it is very relative to our own personal business, of course, too, as well. I think that's mostly how I'm viewing expenditures and lead generation, that type of thing.
So with your networking efforts, what does that typically look like?
It's hard to explain. I think I'm really just kind of looking for every single angle I can find. The last big sale that I did, I am kind of shamelessly promoting it. And it has actually generated a lot of new connections, new conversations. So very, very thankful for that. Most oftentimes it's really, especially on social media, it's just looking for new connections, new ways of doing business that other people don't think of. This referral network thing that is going around these days, in my opinion, it's really a big rage now, and it's something that Compass really kind of perfected from the very beginning. You see a lot of, kind of offshoots now, like there's a couple that I belong to that's outside of Compass. And I think that if you were to, look at these trends, be insightful enough to be ahead of it, I think you also need to be insightful enough to get out of it and try and get into something else, to always stay ahead of the wave. And I think the referral network opportunities that are out there, they're a little bit more watered down. Everyone's part of a network and they're joining a new network and then they're part of another network. And all of a sudden, all these networks, they all, kind of overlap. And then there's no longer a network. There's just a big giant community of realtors that all know each other. And so you got to kind of find something else. What I've started to find lately is through social media, looking for lenders that are all across the state of California, and especially not in my local market, and reaching out to them directly and saying, hey, if you don't have an agent out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, then I'd love to start a relationship with you. If ever you get a lead that comes in that you don't know an agent out here, then you should contact us first. And that actually landed one yesterday. And so it's kind of interesting. Like, you try something out and you get one tiny kernel of success with it, and then you just kind of snowball it as hard as you can into an actual system or a process until you find out you can't do it anymore, or it's played out and you go find something else. So that's kind of one thing I'm working on right now.
That's a smart strategy, is, when it stops working, stop, pivot, like figure out if there's a variation you can do, or maybe just something entirely different. It reminds me, a friend of mine, Ryan, said, like, if you figure out what's working, go as deep and far into that hole as you possibly can. And he's like, it's better to dig 100-foot well than it is to dig 100 1-foot wells. And it's, to your point, it's like, sure, you can join 100 subpar referral networks, or you can just go all in on this one thing that, and in our price point, like one closed lead that's a big deal. That's we're talking big numbers. That's a big drive of revenue to the bottom line from that one closed lead. And so just being a little bit more tenacious in that one category. And as we talked about earlier, lenders are typically first in line when people have the idea they want to buy or sell. And then the next, we talked about it earlier, is if you have the cash, typically the first person you talk to is the person who's helping you with your finances. So your advisor, that's going to be the first person you talk to. And so having a network of those symbiotic people you can refer that's incredibly powerful. Because there's no competition, it's just, you're going to help them grow and vice versa. You're going to help them, they're going to help you.
Yeah, I've always found it weird that lenders always chasing realtors around, or to get business. And I was like, well, you know, is there a way that, going upstream, works just as well? And I was like, okay, well, I think maybe I'll just try chasing lenders around and see what happens.
That's an interesting play. I mean, there's only one lender, shout out to Blake, who actually passed me referrals ever, which is astonishing with the amount of referrals we pass to lenders.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that was another thing too. I was like, why am I giving all this business to all these lenders and they're not giving it to me? Why can't I try and take some from them somehow?
It's such a good message here is develop your network. Like your network ultimately in this business creates your net worth. So it's like, if you just keep building that out, you will then have a really good, strong, long-term book of business.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Grant, thank you. That's been an hour. So we're going to be wrapping it up here. What is the best way for people to find you out on the online world?
At Grant Good Agent is the handle that you need to know. Write it all down. It's all one word. GrantGoodagent. You can find me pretty much everywhere by just using that handle. I always use the Good Agent hashtag, but I think there's a lot of other people that kind of use that too, whether they be insurance agents or sports agents, whatever. You can also search me by my name, Grant Inaba, and it's unique enough that, and I've kind of plastered myself all over the internet enough that you should be able to find me pretty easily too. Shout out to Carrie Ann Inaba. If it weren't for her, no one would know how to spell my last name. We're not related. I wish we were. Carrie Ann, if you're out there, let's talk. And share your network with me, please.
Awesome. And as well, I'll be adding this info in the show notes, so it'll be really easy. If anybody has a client going out to East Bay, part of the Bay Area, they'll easily be able to come and find you. Hey man, thanks for your time. Always appreciate our conversations. I feel like I actually wrote some great notes in my notebook, which I want to bring back to my team. So thank you.
Oh, of course. Yeah, you're welcome. And I would love to meet the rest of your team and network with them and share more great advice with each other. Would love to get great advice from you guys on what you guys do in your market, because I know it's very competitive. It's a very high intensity market, and there's certainly tons we can learn from you guys too.
100%. All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.